I do think that having conversations with friends and say, like, would you want to know the day you were going to die? It's like how anytime you go to a funeral, you have that little bit of a, ooh, what would it be like for me? Not from the grief perspective, that's obviously a thing. Like, what if I died at 56? Use those opportunities, don't run from them. Walk through a cemetery, write your eulogy, write your obituary, get yourself thinking a little bit about the life you have lived, and more importantly, though, the life you still have to live, because that, again, is the only thing that's right in front of you right now for a limited time only.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Headed Home podcast, where we dive into conversations that inspire intentional and meaningful living. Today, we are honored to have Jodi Wellman with us. Jodi is a speaker, an author, and an executive coach dedicated to helping individuals live lives worth living. She founded 4,000 Mondays, a practice that empowers people to infuse their lives with urgency, passion, and intensity. Jodi holds a master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania, where she also serves as an assistant instructor. Her latest book, You Only Die Once, serves as a compelling catalyst for living with purpose and passion. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm downright giddy to be here with you both. Thank you.
Well, I want to start because Jodi, I don't even know how we're connected. I'm assuming that I probably heard you interview somewhere or whatnot and bought your book. And I ended up reaching out to you because, and I know I had mentioned this to you in in my message that I sent you. But one of the reasons that this podcast was really founded was on a lot of the ideas that you talk about in your work and in your book. And, really, we created this podcast when I had gone through a pretty significant set of years with health-related issues, and it really flipped Andrew and I's lives upside down in a good way, I would say, in a not so good way too sometimes. But I think it allowed us to really take stock of things that mattered and things that didn't. So I was like, gosh, I'm just going to reach out to her because I want to talk about this idea of really learning how to live when you start thinking about death, because it's really changed my life in a great way. So I would love for you to talk about what inspired you to write your book, You Only Die Once.
I'd love to go there. And too, Jen, thanks for saying all that. I do feel kindred spirity with you in that some of us philosophically are already oriented, or we've had an event happen that has caused us to feel like, whoa, the sanctity of life, or to, as I always say, like take it more serious or less serious, depending on what you need more from your days moving forward. So yeah, I certainly know we're aligned. And I sometimes think my story would be so much more exciting if I had a near-death experience, but I didn't. My real impetus to coming to this fascination, which has been lifelong, on the idea that we are all careening towards this weirdly inevitable death. And yet, despite all that, we truck on every day and we're trying to make the best of our days. And, we're going out and buying Cheerios and we're trying to love and live. And then we're going to die. That odd kind of inevitable fate has always just been baffling to me. And thankfully, in more of an amusing way than an existential crisis way. However, my main kick in the pants was when my mom died in her late 50s. So it was an unexpected event. It was a heart attack. And the experience I went through cleaning out her apartment was life-changing. So it wasn't even that, I lost my mom, which obviously was super crappy. But it was that I got to go through the excavation of dormant dreams. Like I cleaned out and I filled so many garbage bags. It hurts my heart to even think about how someone's dreams can get thrown out in the trash. But she had all these ideas and business plans and goals and like manuscripts and drawings and all these things that I knew about over the years because she's just such a sweet creative soul. But she didn't execute on them. One part was because she didn't have the confidence. And then the other part was just the thing we all fall into, which is this notion like, I'll do it later. Like I'll have time. I'll do it when, when insert here, like things slow down or when I'm feeling more fit or when I retire or whatever. Well, I mean, that to me was like, well, wake up call, slap in the face. Because I knew that I postponed my dreams out of fear, but also out of this deluded notion that I'll just do it later. Well, what if you don't get it later? And not only that, let's not even talk about the fact that we might not get it later, because we all know that's true, but also kind of crappy. Like, what about now? What about savoring and enjoying the crap out of now when we are technically at our youngest and most vibrant? We'll never be younger than we are today. So now you're getting me all worked up. Ugh.
I did appreciate reading about that in your book because, I lost my dad when he was 63. And so he was younger. And I think a lot of times we go throughout our lives and we do make the assumption that we have time, right? And so you don't kind of like frame that in the sense of like, I actually don't have a lot of time. And well, do you want to show her your special thing? That
the Monday. Yeah. So Jen found this. So it's what is it? Weeks of my life is what it says at the top. And I think you in your book talk about 80 years, but this is like 88 years of Mondays. And so I went through and scratched out all the Mondays that I've already passed. I'm somewhere in the middle here. But that was like, just that alone is just I was like, I got to get started. Like when you look at it in this way, where like you put it down on paper and you actually see that expiration date. And I think you brought it up the other day too. I don't know what we were talking about, but you were like, well, what if you knew, or no, you asked if I would like to know when I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's a weird, I didn't know what to say. I was just like, that's a weird question, but it's also like, what if you did put a date on it? How would you act? What would you do today? You
guys just cut to the heart of all of this. I love how you talk about this, think about this, and now you've bottom lined everything, because everything I talk about at 4,000 Mondays, and I think what we have in common is this idea about, as much as it seems crappy to look at the scarcity of time, because of course we would much rather look at the abundance of life. Yeah, but it just doesn't work as well. Like we do need the inevitable deadline, right? And what we're talking about is tuning into the fact that we're finite, that you're going to not be able to scratch off all those boxes at some point soon. And that is that sense of finality that we do need in order to oftentimes motivate us to kick into action. So that question about would you rather know? And so we would rather know if the year, of course, was 49 years from now. That sounds also like that's kind of what I was banking on anyways. But what if it was? I wrote a blog post at one point about what if you knew your deadline was 16 years from your next birthday? Because 16 to me is like, well, that's just a small chunk, but it's not like 2 years, like blow the bank account, go travel around the world, and I don't know. But I will just answer, for me, I would want to know, and it's because I'd be contradicting myself if I didn't. Like if I somehow could look in a crystal ball and see the year, see the day, that would help me take this whole memento mori concept to the next level, which is, because I still delude myself into thinking I'll have time. I mean, I'm my own number one focused client. I need to remind myself to get living. So would you guys want to know your day?
I feel like
I don't know. I don't think I would. I think I said no. And I don't even know why I haven't. I just think the idea of contemplating it in general is like a good practice now of just thinking about it. But no, I guess the way that I have lived in the past is like, no, I don't want to know. I just want to do my best, but I think when I sit down and think more about it, I should want to know.
Mm-hmm. I totally want to know. I would want to know. And I mean, even in small things, I think when you frame how much time you have left, we have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, but, when you think about I only have, 8 more years with my daughter at home, and really 5 of those, she's not going to be around that much. So I really have 3 intentional years of spending time with her. Or if I'm thinking about bedtime and I'm annoyed about bedtime, well, I really only have a certain amount of times where I'm going to put my kids down, or vacations or holidays. And I think that when there's a time frame around that, it allows you to appreciate it more in the moment, which is hard for me, right? Like I really struggle sometimes with being present, mainly because I'm a planner and try to do 8 million things more than I should be doing in the moment. But I think that, that can really help you hone into like living in the present, which I think is one of the points that you really talk about too.
Yeah, it's one of those notions like if all we have is now, and I believe it or not, I mean, as much as I joke around about being the Grim Reaper's cheerleader and like PR agent, I mean, I do admire and appreciate the role death can play. That's the whole point here. But I don't want to linger for too long on the idea like the countdown, because for me, it's not so much, well, first of all, it's not the math, that's boring, but it's also not the, whoa, I only have this many boxes left on my chart. Because I love the visual, by the way. Or it's not that, like, I know I have 1,758 Mondays left as of this week. It's not to be dour, right? I think what we're hitting on here is it's this, can that be the animating feature? Can that be the thing that makes us go, oh, sometimes it needs to be a bit jolting. Unfortunately, again, that's the way our psychology works. It does need to be a bit of that poke in the ribs to say, oh, what am I waiting for? Like if my mom knew 3 years, for example, before she died, I'm pretty darn sure she would have sent out the manuscripts. That feeling of like, okay, like rejection will not feel great. But if I know how finite my time is, and that's again, all of us here, like whether we could debate whether you'd want to know your exact date or not, because I do like a little bit of mystery in life, like, but maybe it would be nice to not entirely know, but maybe I'm a planner. I also would love to, but the concept remains. If we are, in fact, beautiful ticking time bombs, let's just tune into that fact in a jovial way. Like we're all in this together. It's our shared, the one thing we all have in common. And let that be the motivator, because again, we get scared and we delude this notion, like we postpone our time because we do think we're going to have time. But we all know the way time works. As I say in the book, it's a premise, not a promise. So it's almost like we have nothing to lose. We're all dying right now. Let's just do it. Like, really? But what's the worst thing that could happen? We're going to die? Yeah, it's already going to happen. So why don't start the business, start the podcast, ask her to marry you, do the thing,
Be embarrassed, fail. Like, who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about regrets too. So in your experience, like what are some common regrets that people have at the end of their lives and how can we avoid them?
Well, many of us think when we talk about regrets, I run into this a lot in workshops. People think about a mistake they made that they regret. And let's just all absolve ourselves, because the cool thing in research is that we tend to generally over time forgive ourselves for what's called regrets of commission, like the mistakes we made. So, okay, they don't matter. Then let's just forget them, forgive ourselves for the stupid stuff. And then now focus on the regrets that are the regrets of omission. They're the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, like the paths we didn't take that we're always going to go, but right till research shows kind of to our deathbeds. Oh man, like what would have happened if I did go back and take that program at school? Or what would have happened if I did start that business, or if we did adopt that kid, or if we did buy that home in San Francisco, or, and then the coolest part about all this, because again, this isn't just like, oh, let's just have a pity party about our deathbed regrets, like the lives we chose not to live. It's that, we have the ability to course correct these regrets in the making. So like I just do this exercise and I do it too for myself. I do it every time I do a workshop. So I'm doing a lot of lists myself. I'm like, well, if I went tonight, what would I regret? And some of the things are really just silly, like not trying parsnips or, but some of them are bigger, right? Like that I didn't put myself out there and ask for so-and-so, ask for some kind of partnership or collaboration with so-and-so in business because I was just too nervous and scared and afraid of rejection, or that I wasn't more present with my dad when I visited him, that I was just always too busy on my laptop because I'm so busy. Okay, well, also, so things that you can actually stop and say, this is instructive. And now that I'm not dead, for at least now, knock on wood, I get to maybe apply for that program at school. Or I get to maybe change my career. I get to maybe be more present with my dad, or I get to maybe XYZ, I just love that we can look inwards using death as, again, the catalyst, and allow ourselves to prevent those regrets. That's the thing. I call it like the regrets prevention department. Like we get to live a life where we went for it, and maybe it screwed up. Like Jen, to your point, maybe we fail, but the flavor of failure is just so much more delicious than the flavor of not giving it a go.
You mentioned in the book this idea of death reflection and how, and this like really stuck with me when you said, when you have a level of like death reflection, the bullshit flies out the window. And I like loved it. And by the way, I listened to the audiobook and you were hilarious and I was like laughing, which I generally don't normally laugh listening to people. And so I just appreciate your little like pieces of humor in that. That was very funny. But I think, the bullshit that we tell ourselves all the time, we're like, I can't stand in front of people because what if something happens and I'm embarrassed? And I think that when you have that death reflection, whether it's, and you talk about some different strategies, which we can get into in a little bit. But I think that really, really starts to clarify and focus people on like what actually matters and what actually doesn't, even if we have feelings pop up that make us uncomfortable, right?
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like, that's part of it. And so not avoiding it, but what does it do? And you both, one of the things you do best in this show is talk about like living with intention. And I think that's what this really is, right? Is using the reflection of the fact that we're finite and quantifying it. Because again, we do need these tricksy ways to get our minds to go, whoa, like I kind of knew the years, but I didn't know the weeks, or I didn't know how many summers I have left with my kiddo, or XYZ, right? We need to have these little jolts in order to do that important work of getting clear. So the priority thing you mentioned, like the idea about getting rid of the BS. I don't know why I said BS. I love to say bullshit. I was just trying to be proper.
It's really fun to say. Yeah. That's maybe why I like you so much too.
Exactly. I mean, barely contained over here. There, like the whole chapter on people who've had brushes with death. I am fascinated by these people, and not everybody who's had a brush with death, like a cancer diagnosis or, a bad car accident or whatever, has had this like life-changing epiphany. But research is pretty clear that most do, or at least for a period of time, they have that eye-opening sense of, whoa, like I peered over the edge, man. I saw what I had to lose. And now I see what really matters, who matters. And now I see what doesn't. And one of the coolest things in the research is that there's apparently this sort of like dissolving of the trivial stuff, the releasing of those, like, why do I care about that? Like, I don't need to care about pleasing these people anymore. It's like, who cares? Or the extrinsic stuff, like, who cares about, what kind of shoes I'm wearing? It doesn't matter. Am I comfortable? Like this really neat refining of a life that feels like it's purposeful and matters and is also full of joy. That's the breath of fresh air. And in psychology, I love that expression they come up with, roar of awakening. And that's the thing that I aim to help us all feel, myself included, without feeling like, without flatlining on the medical table and being brought back to life. But if you got brought back to life, then we have to do these thought exercises because this is just the way it works. Imagine that you almost died and that you got to come home from the hospital. And I've just talked to so many people in my research about people who have been able to come home from the hospital and they look around with this new life, like a literal second chance. And they're like, wow. And they see the vestiges of their old life. Like I'm looking at the notes, my to-do list here, and I'm looking at that like, yeah, that's stupid. Like, why do I care about that? Or like, why was I worried about that? Or worrying about how you're going to say yes or no to someone. It doesn't matter. We don't have to be jerks. We get to say, I only have so many Mondays left. Maybe not even that many. I get to be so judicious about how I spend my time. I get to just this is a freaking gift. I don't think I'm coming back. I don't know if I'm coming back. I don't know if I'm going up or down, but regardless, all I know is I have this limited time left and what would make me feel alive and like I'm living on purpose until that day comes.
That's awesome. And I love how you just said that, like, what would make me feel alive? I love how you talk about like being intentional with making a list of the things that make you feel alive and writing them down. And when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, like, why don't I do that? Like, I kind of know, but like, I should know. I'm 43 years old. Well,
what's on your list? I don't even know how old.
No, I mean, like, that's what I mean.
Left.
I know, but I think sitting down, I think it's just a good practice for everyone. Like, sit down and like write out a list of all of the things that make you feel alive, and then write a list of all of the things that take away from you, right? We can maybe talk a little bit more about that.
You just made me think in saying that, reminding me about how bizarro we are as humans, right? That like you'd think our self-awareness would be pretty tuned in, which is hilariously not true. Like when I ask people, when I used to coach one-on-one, but now in groups or whatever, it's like, what makes you happy or what makes you feel alive? It's often like it's met with faces of fear, like, oh shit, I don't know. Like, and usually I'm just going to gender this for a second. Often it's women who've spent a lot of their time in life caregiving for other people. You're like, oh, I can tell you everything that makes my kids and my family happy. But wait, me, like, oh, I'm happy when they're happy. But like also, no, but really, like, what else would be things that bring you joy? And so we're all allowed, and it's all cool to right now feel a little bit like, I don't know. And then we do the thing where we're like, traveling. But even still, when we start the exercise, it's just kind of neat then how it starts to roll. And I'm a big fan of keeping a running list and adding to it. And all of a sudden going, oh my gosh, that's right. I forgot that. I always love going into I don't know, one woman just told me in a workshop last week, one of her favorite joys is when she's traveling, she goes into a new thrift store. Like that for her, for whatever reason, brings her like unbridled enthusiasm. I'm like, you do you then, go. And then someone else is like, I just love going for a walk and a hike, and I take pictures of the most unique plant I can find. And then I go back home and I look at them later. I'm like, that is for you and not for me, but I love that you love that. And like, that's the thing, right? What I love, you wouldn't love, and vice versa, but it's tuning in and adding to that list. Now, I just realized I used two examples that might cause us to go, well, wait a minute, I'm not always traveling, so how do I get to a new thrift store? Or I'm not always able to go on a hike. How do I take a picture of a beautiful flower? The cool thing is that for most of us, our lists are assembled with these neat little things that are just like everyday accessible. Like being able to sit outside on the patio and have a morning cup of coffee just when it's really quiet and the sun's coming up, right? Or being able to go for a walk around the block with the dog, listening to your favorite playlist from when you were in high school, or making a Sunday ice cream dinner party, like little things that don't cost a lot of money and don't take a lot of time. But again, we're just so busy with our usual efficient, productive, responsible routines that we kind of forget. Like I just said the Sunday idea, and I have to tell you, I aim to live a life that's full of joy, but I also value productivity, and I value, getting I guess productivity means getting stuff done, more synonyms. And I will forego living in expense of getting a to-do list done, which is really like, it doesn't matter that I ordered the coffee on Amazon today or tomorrow, right? But like, I want to get it done. Okay, well, fine. I derive some joy from having things done. That's fine. Back to the Sunday idea. When my book came out last May, I intentionally planned a very special day. Half of it was by myself because the husband went traveling. So for the afternoon and for myself, I said, what would make me so freaking happy? If I get a skull-shaped bowl and a skull spoon, and I have for dinner with a glass of champagne, a banana split sundae. And I made that for dinner. And it made me so happy. And now it's been almost a year. And like, I don't advise having ice cream sundaes for dinner, especially obviously your kids would love it. But anyways, that might be cute, like the best parents ever. But why is it a year now? And so I decided, I'm like, in my 1 year anniversary of the book coming out, I'm going to have another skull sundae for dinner, and maybe even breakfast and lunch. You can't stop me. But I do feel this like, why is it that I have to plan this special day in order to have the joy? Well, that's just because of the way we work. But I'm going to plan that, and I'm going to have that be a special day. And so that's what, if you have a happy list, you stand a fighting chance to be able to live an alive life versus one that is just ruled by the roost of routine. Because that, again, is the comforting default setting that we have in order to get anything done and stay employed and maybe married.
That's so helpful for us.
Andrew
I'm glad you articulated it that way.
Andrew had a banana split last week, Jodi.
I do. I love the banana split.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
This year we blocked out basically every 3 months. We're like, taking a weekend, just the two of us to go, actually have a conversation. But I have not seen him happier, I swear to you.
It was amazing.
Than when he bought the
banana
banana split. And I was just laughing. It was like, I could see like 7-year-old Andrew's face.
Yeah, no, I don't take it back at all. But like, it was awesome. But back to your point though, like you stand a fighting chance if you at least have the list, and that list almost like gives you permission, because I feel that way too.
Yeah,
like we're just like so overdrive on efficiency and productivity, and you almost feel guilty by like doing things that make you happy.
Yes. Okay. So thank you for that. The permission part is such a good word. And, again, we could just like talk about the state of society, how we have to give ourselves permission to live and whatever, but that's just true. Me too. And I look at life like becoming an entrepreneur was about 15 years ago, maybe. And I had this fanciful notion that like, oh my gosh, my time's going to be mine, and I'm going to get to take time in the day, and I'm going to go pop out to the museum for 45 minutes, and I'm going to come back and work. And then, well, what ended up happening was because productive old me and like old habits die hard, patterns and routines blow my head off. I'm like, I don't take that time. I might go and have like a work coffee meeting or something, as if those happen anymore. But I look at wait a minute. Like, when was the last time I went to a matinee? Like, I get to do that. And even if those of us are working for a company, it may not be easier for you to slip out for a 2:00 matinee, but I bet you could. The point, though, is that even if it means organizing your life in such a way where you recognize, because it's on your list, for me, one of my joy things is going to a matinee alone when like no one else is there. Or going shopping and browsing through a bookstore when like my lovely husband will endure and he'll stand there over my shoulder and wait for me to be done, which is not as enjoyable. So I'm like on my own time, like I want to go. And so when I have a day when I think, how do I want to live? Like, what kind of life do I want to be living? It would look like this week that maybe I did pop out for a really special coffee by myself. And I brought a journal because maybe I'll be the journaling type, or maybe I will go and browse through the bookstore, and I don't have to buy anything, but I just want to look and be the kind of person that does that. And you don't get to be that kind of person unless you plan it or like actually have that intention. And then, so I do think it's like this awareness, intention, and action. Like, are you aware of what you're doing that is working and not working? Create the intention. Like, I want to be somebody that has a creative life, for example, this week. Or I want to be somebody who is a really good friend this week because I've been ditching my friendships. Okay, well, then what would that look like? Is it booking a walk and talk on the phone to have a catch up with an old friend so that you get 40 minutes in where you're actually moving around and you're laughing and recalling what it was like when you were in college? Like, what, we can be intentional about this. And sometimes we just have to, I call it giving two shits, because I think one shit isn't enough anymore. Maybe it's inflation. I don't know. Two shits is kind of what it's taken these days, but it does take effort. Can we just have a moment of silence? Like, I hate that it takes effort to live a life worth living. I want it to happen to me and just be, and sometimes it's easy. Of course, like good things happen, right? Rainbows will happen. And I didn't organize that. But well, we did have to go through some pretty shitty weather to get the rainbow. So that, but we have to acknowledge that living a life worth living is just going to take just a little bit of work, and then it's so worth it. And then we have to keep coming back. It's like a constant, not a slog, but a project. This life we get to live again, because otherwise our Mondays will pass us by. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how it got to be the end of the month.
I know.
Yeah. No, or the end of the week. Yeah. I mean, just flies by.
I love that what you said about the planning, because the systematizing for me has been really important. So like, for example, one thing I had started doing, like this has probably been 7 or 8 years now. But I have a system where every month in the beginning of the month on my calendar, I have to plan something, a new thing that I've never done. And sometimes it's like crazy, right? Like sometimes like we went and did a hot air balloon. And other times it's like, I'm going to go to a restaurant I've never tried, right? Like it depends. But one thing that brings me a lot of joy is trying new things. And so like I've systematized that. So I think a really important thing that you talk about is that you can't just like wake up and be like, I wonder what like thing I'm going to do today. Like you really have to be intentional and have a system or a plan to like infuse those things into your life, because otherwise that daily routine is going to take over and you're just not going to do it.
Oh, I love you're saying this. it sounds like you implemented this not long after your first kid was born. And
Correct.
probably
Yes.
in a reaction to like, wait a sec, I got to grab hold of getting the joy, making the joy happen, right? Like otherwise you're swept up in the current of childmanship. You just made me think about something else. I'm curious about your opinions on this because you said, Jen, you like to try new things. So like the need for novelty is probably something that's kind of key in you. And if you're not getting it a lot, it might just feel pretty boring after a while. So I like how you have systematized it, to use your words. That's really cool. And then I'll be honest, like I sometimes toy with and I debate the difference between what we're all agreeing on is like we do need to be a bit planful, which feels a little less exciting and glamorous. There's something to be said for this idea about spontaneity too.
Totally.
But I do think that sometimes we have to set the stage for spontaneity because if that's, it's like, I'm going to be spontaneous at 3:10 today. Well, like that's not super spontaneous if you planned it at 3:10.
It's like a half.
But it's like before you're going on a road trip. Okay, so for example, like you said you guys are carving out, you said a weekend, how often for each other?
Yeah, once a quarter.
Once a quarter. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So every 12 Mondays, you'll be like, we did it this weekend. Like we went, we did our thing. Cool. Love that. And I'm sure that a lot of it requires, there's a plan of what you're going to do, right? And what's an example, by the way, of like what you're planning ahead or was something that you have done that's just an example of a weekend together?
Yeah, just this past weekend, we just got a hotel, like it was like 20 minutes away from our house.
Yeah, it wasn't even really, we didn't even really plan a whole lot.
Yeah.
Which
But
was
we ended
very
up like,
abnormal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We ended up like working out the whole time and just eating good food and then just hanging out. So that's what we did. But it was fun though.
But like wandering or sitting in the hotel lobby, like we never sit in a hotel lobby. I'm not kidding. Like
that was fun.
I looked at him and I was like, when is the last time we've just sat and like been,
Yes, we could not have contrived this better had we planned it in advance. For an example of how you carved out, this is our weekend. And it, like you said, I'm normally a planner and you'll plan other great, amazing things. And yet it sounds like you describing what you did on this like pseudo spontaneous, like you kind of went with it and then hanging out in the hotel and working out. Like you may not have planned to do that, but it sounds like it was a pretty great time together. And that's, I think, that right balance about sometimes it can be like minutely done. Like I do this thing on the longest day of the year. The husband and I will have this thing from sunrise to sunset and it's like a bit maniacal. And that could not be every weekend or else we'd all, need and want to die. It's like way too much. But I do think what you're saying is like leaving breathing room for like, we're doing a cool thing this weekend and we're going to sort of see a little bit about what it looks like, or like having that spirit of if we want to pull off the side street and go and check out that really interesting looking store, we're going to do it, rather than it being like militantly holding on to a schedule. So room for both, but I love what you're saying. And I think it's inspiring.
Can you share a personal experience where embracing the principles from your book led to a significant positive change in your life?
One that I'm thinking of right now is moving to Palm Springs. So the husband and I were born and raised in Toronto, and then we moved to Chicago for 15 years. And so, it's a bit chilly in those cities, great cities, but we had been saying for quite a while, it would be great to, get a place for the winter or And I'm becoming really tuned into my own inclinations, but then also this human tendency to be an all talk, no action kind of person. Like we need to warm up and have dreams, right? We need to talk about them for a while and some of us need longer. But I became aware like we were complaining about the weather, which I don't like being in a life where you complain. Like I'm a really big believer that, well, then if it's not working for you, then we have agency and empowerment and we can change it, right? So we made the decision, like back to the idea about how you guys have already made the overarching decision that every quarter we've got a weekend for ourselves. So we made the decision, we're going to get a place somewhere warm. And then it just became, well, now it's a fun research project. And then it became this notion of like, well, we know it's not easy, but again, back to the, like, it takes two shits to have a life you love. Like, yeah. Does it require a lot of administration? Do you need to figure it out? But wait a minute, it's in pursuit of getting to move somewhere where we decided on Palm Springs. And that was a little bit of a fast decision, which was unusual for us, but it felt a little bit exciting and right. And we've been here now it's less than 3 years, but there are a lot of people that I find when I talk to friends or colleagues or whomever, they're like always very curious, like, so you made the move. And I know it's easier without kids, but we do have a senior cat and that was not easy. But I've certainly like life is a bit more flexible, but I would also then say like the number of people that I know that are longing maybe to try a new place. It's like back to the idea about like what's stopping you? Like you could do it. And so I tend to find myself living these like a rigid life because I like to be organized, and I am also I let fear win a lot, and and so that was for us was like this good. We're just going to do it. And so sometimes it's boldly asserting the decision has been made. Now it's just the detail of where, and then you just make it happen. Like you jump into the deep end of the pool. So I think that would be an example. Yeah. And do you guys have like one that you can think of?
A lot of things. Yeah. I think, like switching careers, switching, companies, getting together, I think, there's been a few things.
We were together in high school and college off and on, and then broke up and lived a whole other life with other people. Yeah. And then ended up getting married. It's been, 11 years?
11 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that truly, like, and we talk about it a lot, like, we very easily could have lived a different life and very intentionally did something that we knew, like, it's the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
Isn't that so sweet of me to say for you?
Me too.
That was very nice.
But,
capture that moment.
But like it was. And I think that sometimes if you don't take stock of your life or you're not intentionally thinking about things, those things can not happen and you can live a very different life. And even the premise of this podcast was, we had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I got really sick, and we lived in this house that was beautiful and great. And we looked around and we're like, this doesn't matter to us at all. Like we want to move back to our old house, which is why we called it Headed Home. And we really started understanding and clarifying what we wanted our life to look like. But I think what you said in your move to Palm Springs is like, on some level, it's something that you think about and talk about and plan about. And then on some level, you just do it and then have to like kind of like go along for the ride, right?
Yes, right. Yeah, like there are things we can do where you make it real. Like people that might say, oh my God, I registered for the marathon. I guess I have to start training, or like the thing that you just somehow throw your name in the ring, like you submit the application for the job or for the thing, like now you're going with it, or you commit verbally to your friends to a goal, because then you kind of can't back out as much, So I do think those are huge. Your descriptions about reinventing in a way, like you flagged to me this notion about how so many of us would be willing to settle because like you had previous lives that might have been fine, or like good enough, or like I say in the book, I love my dear dad, but he has this notion about how half a loaf of bread is better than no loaf at all. And I can't even say it without wanting to barf because it's so sad to me. Like he'll just like hold on to the little meager thing he has because he doesn't want to rock the boat. Because what if he loses the bread, half a loaf? I'm like, my whole thing, like go for the full fucking loaf, right? Like what about it? And I'm not suggesting that we throw caution to the wind and like ruin your life, but I do think you guys took a bit of a chance to go back together and to move back to the first place home. And like these are things where there is a quote, F. Scott Fitzgerald, I don't have it memorized, but it's so worth getting into. That one where he says about like, I hope you have the courage to reinvent your life.
I love that. Yes.
Like, and it does take courage. All the stuff we're talking about, like living takes courage. I think Seneca, the old philosopher, was like, sometimes it is an act of courage just to live. Like it is harder sometimes to talk about and think about and plan living than it is even to freaking die, because it does require busting out of a comfort zone and feeling overriding the fear, or again, just coming to terms with the fact that I might not get to do that later. Like I might not get to rekindle my high school and college love later because, we may not have later. What if we got back together now?
Right. Well, just to kind of close, what are some ways that, or some action steps, I would say, that people can infuse this idea, and you talk about this memento mori, but like, what are some things that you feel like people could do very tangibly to start kind of infusing some of these ideas into their lives?
I'm a big fan, first of all, with the mortality math. So I think we're all best served from like the day we're born to be counting how many Mondays we have left. And there's a calculator on my website. You can just do it for free. It's on the resource page. So don't even worry about math. So I do think sizing the prize and like the diminishing time is important. And having that be a refresh number, because otherwise it's just a notion that you like revisit like once a year. No, I think it needs to be the countdown that's effective. I think kind of like your, Andrew, the chart you have there, like if you can be more visual, I'm a visual person. So I have like pick your poison. I've got skulls everywhere, reminders of, our mortality. Not everybody, that might not be your decor of choice.
I love
it. But I think that having these little visuals, associating even things like for some of us, it could be kind of making a deal with yourself that like every time you have a bouquet of flowers, that you use that because the flowers are going to look great today and then they're going to, crumble and die. And have that be kind of that signifying symbolic thing that, right, time is ticking. I'm a bigger fan. If this all makes people feel squeamish, that's okay. There's a way that you can have more fun with it, which I think is making it social and asking friends even what's on their bucket list. You don't have to quantify the fact that dun, 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 death is on the horizon. It could just be like, what cool things do you want to do? On what's on your bucket list? And the caveat with that, though, is that it's not just this open-ended dream that we all, you have a glass of wine and you're talking about all the places you want to travel and all the neat things you want to do and the hot air ballooning, and then you never do it. No, it's about helping each other as friends or family say, okay, so of those things you just mentioned, which one would be cool to do next? And like, when could that be? And like hold each other accountable to some of the dates and days for it. Cause like what is it? Like a plan without a date is just a wish or something like that. And then, once you've built up some, tolerance for talking about like a bucket list, I do think that having conversations with friends, like how you guys just did, and say like, would you want to know the day you were going to die? All of these things are visceral ways to get us thinking about how temporary we are. It's like how anytime you go to a funeral, depending upon who it is for, you have that little bit of a, ooh, what would it be like for me? Not just not from the grief perspective, that's obviously a thing, but from a, wow, like what if I died at 56? Or what if this happened? Like, what would that be like for me? And then for my family. And so use those opportunities. Don't run from them. Use those opportunities. Walk through a cemetery. Write your eulogy. Write your obituary. Get yourself thinking a little bit about the life you have lived. And more importantly, though, the life you still have to live. Because that, again, is the only thing that's right in front of you right now for a limited time only.
I love that. Great advice. And where can our listeners find you, Jodi?
Other than Palm Springs, they could find me at 4000mondays.com. I'm just hanging out here. Come on over. I'll have a margarita.
Palm Springs.
But yeah, 4000mondays.com. And then on Instagram at 4000mondays. And I just love anybody that wants to reach out and talk and laugh. I mean, hey, we'll share doodles of the Grim Reaper, whatever you got.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to all of our listeners. We really appreciate you listening, and please connect with us. We would love to connect with you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.